one thing only, and that is things that really irritate me. And what I'm about to speak about is one of those things that I find most annoying about this business. Unfortunately, within the environment of investing, within finance, the thing that lets it down most often are the people who are involved in finance. Trading in and of itself is an easy profession. It's not all that complicated to master the basics. The great problem is the people who are involved in this industry make it so very, very hard. And they make it so very, very hard because the majority of them are so very, very stupid. I was chatting recently with one of the members of our mentor program. As par for the course with the mentor program, when people are finished and they move on to our graduate program, we sit and go through their trading plan with them, and we try and knock off any rough edges and point out any inconsistencies that might have appeared. It's an easy way to clear up any misconception, and it is certainly much cheaper and much easier than the market doing it. Now, this plan we were looking at was somewhat complicated, and I was having trouble getting to grips with it because there were certain bits that weren't really quite falling into place for me for some reason. So, as is our course, I got on the phone, and it is very, very easy to sort these things out of the phone. And during the course of the conversation, the plan itself became much, much clearer to me, and I began to understand why there was a little bit that was tripping me up. And it was not a small matter that was causing the difficulty. The difficulty arose because the person writing this plan had around $600,000 in equity. They had been advised by somebody else that what they should do is go out, borrow another $1.8 million, grossing it up to $2.4 million, and that they should invest this money in the stocks that their system had generated in a single go. So there was no consideration for any form of organic entry, of letting the market tell you when you should enter and how you should enter and how much you should enter with. So there was no concept of portfolio heat, there was no understanding of risk. It was simply take all your money and buy all these stocks. That in and of itself is a profoundly stupid idea and is dramatically amateurish in its tone. But what made this much, much worse was the simple fact that this recommendation was given that this money should be dropped into the market without stops. The rationale as to why it should be dropped in the market without stops, because stops are an impost, they're a cost, you had to manage them, was that this system had an edge, that this system had a proven edge, and an edge is effectively that a system makes money over time. That's a little quirk I'll come to in a moment. My response to this was simple, logical, and very eloquent. It was stop. When you've been doing this for a very long time, as I have, you do come across some really stupid ideas. You come across some things that are so idiotic that they're almost paralyzingly stupid. This, in the pantheon of stupid ideas, is probably in the top 5 I've ever encountered. So whilst I can't give financial advice, operating under the auspices of is this common sense, and then pointing out that it is not, that it is profoundly stupid, our trader has begun to unwind these positions and take an enormous amount of emotional and financial pressure off themselves. So once I had gotten over the initial shock of the structure of the advice he had been given and how poor the advice was, I thought about the notion of an edge and where the confusion for the people who'd given the advice had come from. An edge is a simple concept. It simply means that the system has a positive expectancy. That's all it means, that the system over time makes money. So the concept of the edge reduces, in and of itself, to two key components. And the two key components are, on average, over time. Now, these are very, very important cornerstones to this notion of an edge, because they define how the edge functions. They define what the system makes on average, but also what it manages to do over time. However, it doesn't convey everything. This gives you a superficial look at a system. In no way does it convey to you the actual trajectory of the system, what an equity curve might look like. I've spoken and written before about how through a simple bit of mathematical trickery, you can have a positive percentage per annum return, which actually makes investors no money, but looks very, very good. Consider this hypothetical trading system. You can see this system begins in the year 2000 and it begins with an immediate drawdown, as all systems have to do. Any decent system does this. It does this because it is taking its losses first and it is waiting for its profits to accelerate. It's waiting for them to get traction. And you can see that during the equities run, up until the GFC, this system functioned. Since then, it's been a little bit sideways, but it has hit a new equity peak about 2 years ago. This tells me something, and I could say that this system has a positive edge. It has a positive expectancy. But it doesn't tell me whether I could actually trade the system. It doesn't tell me whether I'm emotionally capable of doing that, because as a human, I'm biased to simply see the positive side of this. I look at this and go, yes, it started at $1 13 years ago, and the current value is just under $13. So that's all I see. I don't see the GFC. I don't see the sideways movement. I see the very positive trend, and this is why we let machines do our testing for us. But again, it doesn't convey to me what the emotional intensity of trading this system would be. And it doesn't do so until I add in another piece of information. And it's this piece of information. This is the underwater equity curve for this system. It shows me that at the height of the GFC, this system drew down nearly 57%. It also shows me that this system draws down around 20%, probably once every 13 months or so. So it is prone to drawing down. This tells me whether I might be emotionally capable of trading this system. Can I trade a system that loses more than half of its equity and does so very, very quickly? This sort of drawdown curve is reflective of a system that does not run stops. It is reflective of the sort of system that a fund manager might run over their series of portfolios. Because during the GFC, most equity funds in Australia drew down anywhere between 40 and 60%. So this is at the higher end of that. This is a poorly managed system in terms of its capacity to deal with losing trades. So let's go back to our mentoree who was asked to borrow $1.8 million. If he had traded a system like this, it would mean that he would be facing, at the height of the GFC, a loss of about $1.3 million. Now, this is an extreme example. This situation wouldn't have occurred because you would be hit by margin calls instantly, and your equity would evaporate very, very quickly. But it shows you the sort of damage that this sort of idiot notion of not having stops in place and having just this shotgun approach to trading can have. This is the sort of damage that can be done. Which brings me back to this. If you're ever shown a system and you're told it has an edge or a positive expectancy, you need to say, yes, but that's on average, and that's over time, and that information doesn't tell me a lot because I don't know the trajectory of the system. I don't know what the equity curve would look like. And I don't know whether I can trade it unless I was shown this. And I'm quite certain that given the experience of the mentor program, the trader we were counselling certainly would not have been involved in a system that required him to put all his money in the market if he had had access to what the drawdown curve looked like, because that would tell him whether the system was survivable for him. A positive expectancy is often at odds with the notion of the maximum drawdown. Yes, the system might recover over time and on average, but that does not mean that you will recover.